And joining us now, June Carbone. She is the author of co-author of Red Families versus Blue Families, Legal Polarization and the Creation of Culture. June, am I pronouncing your last name right, or do we say the E at the end?
You've got it right.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. I love statistics. Fascinated by any books that talks about numbers and also fascinated. Well, first of all, I'm fascinated by all books having to do with sex.
All issues having to do with sex.
Although I'm guessing that your book's not that kind of book about sex. We talked about it a lot actually at the beginning of the show, so we teased your book nicely here. How have conservatives or social conservatives, the general overview here, how have they and I know your book is about so many things, but how have many of the social conservatives in red states and in all the states sort of gotten it wrong about sort of teaching and preaching sexual morality?
Well, here's the thing. They see a world where they're right. Things are going to hell. You see your children not doing what you taught them to do. You see marriages falling apart, the divorce rate's up there. You see more women having children without being married, and you say what we need are traditional values.
Right.
And there's even a book by a Harvard professor that says we went wrong with the Enlightenment, not just the 60s. And so what we need to do is bring back traditional values. And you say, what does that mean? Well, if it means teach them abstinence in school, get them married young, try to keep them in the home, what that correlates very strongly with is divorcing a couple of kids by 25.
Right.
And it does because it just doesn't work. I visit my working class relatives in Rochester, New York, a blue state. I talk about my daughter is 25 and hasn't met the right man yet, and they say she's too young. And they get it. They get that if you really stick to the traditional system, abstinence, early marriage, you're also talking about divorce and single-parent families.
So the suggestion is that if you actually expand access to contraception and delay marriage, that some of the things that conservatives claim to want, meaning a lack of divorce, of abortions, stable families, that will actually happen.
Good things are there for those who wait.
Right.
I mean, there are very nice statistics that once you control for all kinds of things, education, wealth, etc., simply waiting produces lower likelihood of divorce and better outcome for kids. It's not the whole picture, but if you try to make marriage come early, and you've got to have early marriage if you're going to preach abstinence, then you're also going to have to live with more divorce.
Put this in the context of the economy, because I thought one of the things that was interesting was the notion that because of economic pressures, some of these decisions to have a child and the like, that's sort of where the shoe can pinch additionally. How does that factor into everything?
Well, that gets complicated. I mean, on the one hand, you see better things happen in a good economy. So if you go back to the 90s, you see teen births fall, and they fall most dramatically for African Americans, which is it's almost invisible. African Americans in the 90s bought into what had been the message of social conservatives, which is hold off on having the kids at younger ages, and they did so because of better economic times and because of more contraception. But they also did so because black churches were out there preaching against teen pregnancy and having a receptive audience. When times get bad, the irony is you've got several things going on simultaneously. First, contraception is just harder to afford. Contraception got more effective in the 90s with long-acting contraceptives, but you have to have health insurance or access to a doctor to be able to afford them. So what you see happening right now is the more responsible people, hard economic times, are feeling they can't afford kids, they're having fewer children. But as you go down the socioeconomic ladder, it's also harder to afford effective contraception. So what you see is that what has been a long-term trend, people who are simply more responsible have fewer kids. That's especially true in hard economic times. People who are worse off start having more kids teen pregnancies are up, and they're up most for the most disadvantaged women. That's a very bad sign.
And that obviously has economic repercussions for all of us, too, because you're talking about people without health care having children who won't, in all likelihood, have health care.
That's right.
But we don't need health care reform. That's no big deal.
No problem.
Yeah, no problem. There are no long-term effects. We're fine. So I want to go back because this the whole idea of abstinence and the sort of idea that this will work fascinates me because it so goes against human nature, and it's so obvious to me that it won't work. And I love that you have some statistical data in your book, Red Families versus Blue Families, to suggest that it won't work. Or suggest that other things will work. But of course, the key, if you convince people that waiting will, again, encourage the things that, and I said that conservatives want, but it's a thing that conservatives, moderates, and liberals want. Everybody wants fewer abortions and more stable families and fewer divorces. That's the thing that the Americans, Canadians, Mexicans, Pakistanis, everybody wants that. No one in the planet, everybody wants that who is a person, wants stable families and fewer abortions and fewer divorces. But of course, for social conservatives, at least in America, the key to making them, I think, understand that if you wait, and we'll talk about girls because even social conservatives seem to understand that boys and young men are going to want to have sex. The key would be to making them understand that if you encourage young girls, women in their 20s, to wait to get married so that you will have these fewer abortions and more stable families. That if you encourage them to wait until they're 25, 26, 27, 28, you've got to get social conservatives to understand these women are going to have sex. So you've got to let their, and when they hit 18, 19, 20, 21, they're going to have to use contraception, and it's going to have to be available to them no matter their socioeconomic status. Right?
That's right. Although I will give them credit for some things. I think the people who are serious about this realize they have to reach men as well as women. And what I'd like to see, those of us who are a bit more liberal on this, emphasize is it's not just contraception before marriage. If you want to get married at 19 and use contraception until you turn 23, I'm all for that. One of the things where this abstinence program derails is, abstinence in middle school. There's a new study. Abstinence in middle school works. And you've got some improvement for 15 and 16-year-olds. It doesn't work for 20-year-olds.
Right.
And so this idea that it has to be one size fits all, we have to emphasize abstinence until marriage, and therefore we never have to teach birth control.
So let me get back to that. So because I want to know, and I want to know the data, and I don't want to be wrong, obviously. So abstinence works as a method of teaching up till what age, basically?
Well, there's a new study, and it's the first serious study I've seen suggesting that abstinence works for delaying the beginning of sexual activity, and it was for middle schoolers.
Well, I'm
if you
for that.
preach abstinence in middle school, it might work.
All right, so that's like up till age 14 or 15.
That's right. And there are studies that indicate an increased abstinence during the 90s. Explained about 15% of the drop in teen pregnancy, but overwhelmingly for middle-class whites between the ages of 15 to 17, and had no impact on older teens. It's not abstinence till marriage. It's part of a movement to delay. But here's the rub on that. It has the most effect. Now, these are not abstinence programs work. I've seen no evidence of that beyond middle school. This is that there was an increase in abstinence for 15 to 17-year-olds in the 90s. Now, that's a cultural shift. That's not a result of the programs. The programs are disturbing to me because if you ask the question, who is more likely to be in abstinence-only programs? Well, African-American women are more likely than whites. Poor women are more likely than middle-class women to end up in abstinence-only classes. Who starts sex at earlier ages? Poor women, African-American women. So you have this mismatch. If the abstinence has some effect, and there's some evidence that it does, the better off the population, the more likely abstinence is to have some effect. But these aren't abstinence programs. They're a shift in norms. And the other thing we find is that when you do it for the whole school, it's less effective than if you do it for targeted groups. But I want to emphasize that the decline in the 90s is not because of the programs. It's because of a shift in norms.
Right, it's cyclical. What goes on in an abstinence-only program? I mean, it seems like it would be a pretty short class.
Well, I think, again, there are a couple of different things going on, and there.
I mean, like leave the banana peeled. You guys can go,
I went to a Catholic school, and I can tell you among my most vivid memories of high school is the nun in freshman biology, the day she decided to teach human sexuality. And I guarantee you there was nothing in that class about contraception.
Right.
But there was a little bit about how it worked.
Right. But I mean, really, like, what could possibly go on in an abstinence-only program?
I mean, obviously, if I had to guess, it's probably all the bad stuff that happens if you don't act responsibly, which is to not engage in sexual activity until you're in the sanctity of marriage or whatever you want to,
It just seems like, 5 days a week for 45 minutes a day?
Well, you got to make the point over and over, Ben.
All right, okay, all right.
But Ben's point, I thought we're sort of discussing this before we came to you, is a good one in that the irony of this is just remarkable. I mean, in that this provokes the very activity that it's really like going somewhere to talk about what you're not supposed to think about and not supposed to do on a regular basis, so that all you're thinking about is this thing you're not supposed to think about, and all you want to do is this thing you're not supposed to do, because it, of course, is the natural course of your body anyway.
That's right, and if you make people feel guilty about it, I mean, I certainly remember my own youth, then what you end up with are, when I went off to college, one of the things we were very shocked by is it was the good Catholic girls who really had believed in it in high school who were the first ones to get pregnant in college.
Right.
And, what that sets off politically, though, is something worse, because I think what's happened now is the conservative efforts haven't worked. And you see a shift among the people who have tried them and really believed in them. They haven't produced much difference. But what that does then is to say, you see, the crisis is even worse than we thought. We need even more draconian messages. But you've got out there, if you look at what's happened in Europe, all the attention is on the fall in fertility rates. But underlying that is the fact that you have much more success in preventing unplanned pregnancies that disproportionately affect poorer women. And so when you look at things like poverty rates and when you look at things like educational levels, you have this reinforcing set of tendencies. If a higher percentage of children are born to women who aren't prepared to take care of them, then the poverty rates and the educational levels of the next generation are lower.
Well, that's the brutal rub consistently that we keep falling into. We don't have much time left, June. We're talking to June Carbone, but Mark touched on it there. But the point that I made at the beginning of the show, and again, not much time, but and I don't know how much your book really could possibly touch on this, but you mentioned it in your anecdotal evidence of when you went to school and the good Catholic girls falling into it. But it's the ones who were pregnant quickest. But it's the shame factor of when you're attempting to be abstinent, and then when your body takes the natural course and you can't resist it because you're, human, that I think then that you can't follow through, and you're afraid to even go to the pharmacy to buy a condom because there's so much shame involved, because you think you're supposed to be abstinent, you're afraid to talk about it with a friend or anyone, and then you're in worse shape than you would be if you hadn't been attempting to be abstinent in the first place. I mean, that's my perception of human beings in general. Does that follow through and make some sense to you, June?
Absolutely, and it's and we make it harder. So when you look at what Obama yanked from the stimulus package, there was a provision in the stimulus package that simply would have made it easier for states to get federal money so they could hand out contraceptives to women in the hospital bearing kids. Medicare aid pays for 40% of all births in the U.S. right now. And some states want to save money by handing out contraception in the hospital after a poor woman gives birth. And what happened? Obama yanked the provision in the stimulus package that would simply have allowed federal funds to go to the states for that without the paperwork. That's it.
Well,
and that's what we're doing.
That's because we're afraid of conservatives.
That's exactly right.
And it's one thing not to federally fund abortions, and that's obviously a non-starter. And there's a story about that today of an accidental oversight in the language that conservatives have latched onto that they claim will allow billions of abortions a year to be federally funded. It's, of course, complete nonsense in the health bill. But, look, we can't do both. If we're not going to federally fund abortions, which I got, it's a non-starter, we're not going to do it. We got to give contraception to poor people, for the love of God. Anyway,
right.
June Carbone, thanks for joining us. Her book that she's co-authored with Naomi Kahn is Red Families versus Blue Families, Legal Polarization and the Creation of Culture. It's available now. June, thank you for taking the time to talk to us. Fascinating stuff.
Watch a live show 24/7 at theyoungturks.com.